I still remember the life that made me who I am. I still remember the sound of the screen door slamming shut behind me on warm summer evenings, the scent of rain on dry pavement, my mother's quiet humming in the kitchen, the way my father would pause before speaking as if weighing the truth in his chest before letting it go. Some things stay with you, not because they were loud or grand, but because they were real, because they mattered. Memory has a strange way of aging with us. Some moments fade like ink in the sun, while others grow sharper the further we travel from them. We carry them, sometimes gently, sometimes like stone in our pockets, but they shape us all the same. I used to think life was made by big decisions, bold moves, chance encounters, and maybe that's partly true. But the older I get, the more I believe life is really made by what we remember. The things that pressed in close and never quite let go. There are chapters of my life I don't revisit often, not because they weren't important, but because they were, because they changed me, because I'm not sure who I would be if I hadn't gone through them. And maybe that's why I'm here now talking to you, because I believe some stories are worth telling, not for applause or sympathy, but simply so they can breathe. So, someone else might see a little of their own journey reflected back, so you know you're not the only one who still remembers. This isn't a story about perfection or a list of accomplishments. It's not a highlight reel. It's a walkthrough. The quiet corners of a real life, mine, and maybe yours too. I want to bring you into the spaces I used to live in, into the rooms where I laughed, where I broke down, where I prayed for things I didn't even know how to say out loud. I want to show you the people I've loved, the regrets I've tucked away, the choices that made me and unmade me more than once. You see, the past isn't just something we move on from. It's something we build with. Every joy, every scar, every moment of grace or failure, it's part of the foundation beneath our feet. And the beauty of it is, even if you can't go back and change what happened, you can change what it means. You can choose to carry it with softness, with courage, with pride. So today I'm opening a door into memory. Not to dwell in the past, but to honor it, to sift through what made me who I am, and maybe, just maybe, remind you of what made you who you are too. I still remember, and maybe you do too. Let's walk through it together. I still remember the way Sundays sounded, not just what I heard, but how it felt. There was a kind of hush to those mornings, like the world itself was exhaling after a long week. The light came through the curtains, slower, softer. You didn't need a clock to know it was Sunday. You could hear it in the way the house moved. There was the creak of floorboards before footsteps, the steady rhythm of a spoon stirring something warm on the stove, the low static hum of a radio in the kitchen, always set to the same AM station, playing old songs that floated through the air like they belonged there. Somewhere in the background, someone would be flipping through the pages of the newspaper, and the scent of coffee would drift down the hallway like a quiet invitation. You're home, you're safe, you're right where you need to be. And that sound, the calmness of it, the simplicity, it did something to a child's heart. It made the world feel safe, predictable, kind. That was before the world became complicated, before the noise of bills, deadlines, heartbreaks, and disappointments grew louder than the radio in the kitchen, before I learned that peace isn't always something that just happens. You have to protect it, fight for it sometimes, grow it in the middle of chaos like a stubborn wildflower. But back then, Sunday mornings taught me what stillness felt like. They were the rhythm of home, the sound of someone being there before you needed them, the comfort of knowing you could fall apart later if you had to, but not today. Today, someone made pancakes, someone folded your clothes, someone remembered you liked your eggs a certain way, even if you never asked. There was no urgency, no rush. It was one of the few times in the week when everything slowed down enough for connection to sneak in. It wasn't about the food or the furniture. It was the little moments that told you you mattered, that you were part of something, that someone cared enough to create peace for you to grow in. And now, when life moves too fast, I find myself chasing that feeling again. Not the specific sounds maybe, but the essence of them. That sense of grounding, of being known without needing to explain yourself, of being allowed to just be. These days, I don't hear those same Sunday sounds in quite the same way. But sometimes, when the morning is quiet enough, I'll put on an old radio tune, brew a pot of coffee, and let the silence stretch a little longer than usual. I sit in it. I breathe. I remember. Because that sound, that simple, forgotten peace, is still inside me. And every now and then it rises like an echo from a time when love was unspoken but everywhere. When life felt full just because someone was there in the next room, humming an old song, and the world hadn't taught us to be afraid yet. I still remember that, and I still carry it with me. We didn't have much. Not by today's standards. The furniture was secondhand. The clothes were passed down. The dinners were simple, stretching a little meat, a little rice, maybe a couple of fresh vegetables from the neighbor's garden, if we were lucky. Vacations? We didn't take them, not to beaches or big cities. But we had a patch of grass, a tire swing, and each other. And the funny thing is, I never felt poor, because somehow, even when the cupboards looked half empty, our hearts didn't. There was always laughter, always a story being told, always someone making something out of nothing. My mother could take scraps and turn them into comfort food. My father could fix things with a pocket knife and a roll of duct tape. We knew how to mend socks, save leftovers, share what we had, and never waste what someone else might need. I remember sitting on the porch with bare feet and a peanut butter sandwich, watching the sky change colors as the sun went down. That was our entertainment. No screens, no streaming, just the world doing what it's always done, reminding us that beauty doesn't cost a thing. We didn't talk about money, but I know now they were counting every cent. I know now they sacrificed, quietly so we wouldn't carry the weight. And in some ways, I wish I had known then just to say thank you. But I also understand why they didn't want us to worry. They wanted us to live in the kind of fullness that didn't depend on what we had, but on how we loved. That's the thing about growing up with less. It teaches you to see more. You start noticing the little wins. The extra scoop of mashed potatoes, the hand-me-down coat that still fits, the way your dad's eyes crinkle when he smiles. You learn gratitude by default because you can't afford not to. You learn to value time, attention, honesty, because those things never ran out, even when everything else felt like it might. And now, as I stand in a life that looks very different, with more things, more choices, more pressure, I catch myself missing those thinner days. Not because of the struggle, but because of the closeness it created. Because we were in it together. Because we didn't expect life to impress us, only to hold us. I think about that a lot now. How easy it is to fill your house and still feel empty inside. How quickly we forget that the best kind of wealth doesn't live in your bank account. It lives in your memories, in your values, in the way you show up when someone needs you. So yes, we had less. Less money, less space, less of everything the world told us we should want. But we had stories around the dinner table. We had warmth in the winter because we huddled closer. We had the kind of joy that doesn't make sense unless you've lived it. The joy of making do, of making memories, of making each other feel like enough. I still remember those days. And no matter what I gain in this life, I'll never stop being grateful for the time when we had so little, but felt so full. Love didn't come to me like a storybook. It didn't ride in on a white horse or arrive in some dramatic, sweeping gesture. No, love showed up in quiet ways, in faces that smiled through wrinkles, in hands that worked until they ached, in voices that said, "You eat first," or "Drive safe," or "I made this for you." I still remember my grandmother's eyes. They had this soft, tired glow, like she had seen so much of life, and somehow still believed in kindness. She didn't say, "I love you," much. That wasn't her style. But she'd wake before everyone else just to have hot water ready for your tea. She knew how to knit, not just sweaters, but peace. Her hugs weren't dramatic, but when she held you, something in the world went still. Safer, simpler. She taught me that love is presence. It's being there when someone's sick. It's making soup without being asked. It's knowing your grandchild's Favorite mug. She never traveled far, but her love covered the distance. And I didn't know then what a gift it was to be loved like that. So steady, so quiet, so certain. There was a neighbor once, Mr. Harold, lived 2 doors down. Not family by blood, but every bit a grandfather in spirit. He taught me how to plant tomatoes, how to sharpen a knife, how to fix a leaky faucet with a rubber band and a little patience. He never talked about feelings. But when my bike broke, he was the first one out there. When I lost my job years later, he left a brown bag of groceries at my door with a note that just said, "You'll get through." Love sometimes wears overalls and speaks in gestures. I learned that from him. And then there were the messier faces, the ones that didn't always love me well but still taught me something. A first love who taught me how fragile trust can be. A friend who showed me what betrayal feels like. These weren't lessons I wanted, but they mattered because they made me more compassionate, more careful, more honest with my own heart. Love isn't always soft. Sometimes it stretches you, sometimes it hurts, but even the pain can shape you, carve out deeper places where empathy can live. And over time, I've come to understand that love isn't just what you feel, it's what you practice. It's in the forgiveness you give without a guarantee, in the patience you extend when you're tired, in the second chances you offer, and the boundaries you learn to set. I look back now and I see so many faces. Some stayed, some left, some I wish I had more time with, but all of them gave me something. All of them wrote their names on the walls of my heart in different ink. And if I've become someone capable of loving well, if I've learned how to show up, how to give without keeping score, it's because of them. Because someone loved me in my silence. Because someone chose grace over judgment. Because someone didn't give up on me when I wasn't easy to love. I still remember those faces. I still carry their lessons. And every time I love someone a little better, a little deeper, it's because of them. There are parts of my story I don't like to revisit. Wounds that aren't always visible, but I feel them still. Like old bruises under the skin of memory. They don't hurt the same way anymore, but every now and then they whisper, we're here. We shaped you. I used to think strength meant not getting hurt, not showing pain, not crying in public or admitting you cared too much. But time has a way of unraveling that myth. The truth is, strength isn't in what you avoid. It's in what you survive. It's in the moments that tried to undo you and didn't. There was a year I lost almost everything. A relationship I believed would last forever. A job I had built my self-worth around. A friend I thought would never walk away. It all crumbled, quietly, then all at once. And I remember sitting on the bathroom floor one night back against cold tile, wondering what I had left that hadn't been taken or broken. I felt hollow. I felt disposable. I felt like I had failed. But I didn't stay there. Something small, maybe pride, maybe hope, maybe just plain stubbornness kept me going. I got up the next day and the day after that. I started over, even when I didn't believe in the story anymore. And somewhere in the middle of all that ache, I began to rebuild. Not the life I had, but the one I didn't know I needed. The wounds didn't vanish. They healed unevenly. Some turned into scars, but those scars taught me things textbooks and sermons never could. They taught me that people will disappoint you, but you get to choose who you become in response. That grief can feel like drowning, but there's a rhythm to surviving it. Inhale, exhale, repeat. That silence doesn't mean emptiness. Sometimes, it's where clarity is born. That forgiveness isn't always about the other person. It's about setting yourself free. I learned that healing isn't a clean process. It's messy. It backtracks. It wakes you up in the middle of the night, makes you doubt your progress, makes you ache in places you thought were already healed. But eventually, quietly, something shifts. You laugh again without feeling guilty. You stop rehearsing what you should have said. You stop waiting for closure from people who never knew how to offer it. I still remember those wounds, not to dwell in them, but to honor them. They are part of my architecture now. They remind me how far I've come, how deep I've felt, how fiercely I've fought for peace. And maybe that's the real strength, not being untouched, but being changed and still choosing softness, still choosing love, still choosing to believe that even after the worst things, something beautiful can grow again. I didn't break. I bent. I bled. I lost. But I didn't break. And if you're in the middle of your own pain right now, let me tell you, neither will you. Keep going. The wound is not the end. It's just where the story begins to deepen. Sometimes when the house is quiet and the night runs long, my mind drifts to the lives I never lived, the ones that almost happened, the roads I stood before and didn't take. There was a job offer once, across the country, big pay, big title, a whole new life in a city I'd never seen. I was in my late 20s, hungry for more and unsure if more meant success or escape. I sat with the letter in my hand, the future dangling on the edge of a signature. But something inside me, maybe fear, maybe instinct, said not yet. So I stayed. The job went to someone else, and life, as it tends to, kept moving. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I had gone. Would I be wealthier? Would I be lonelier? Would I have lost something I didn't yet realize I was holding on to? There was a relationship too. One of those almost loves that hovered somewhere between fate and fantasy. We had timing but not direction, chemistry but not commitment. For a while we tried to convince ourselves that almost was enough, that it could become forever if we just tried harder, stretched further. But in the end, we both knew better. And so we let go, not in anger, but in quiet understanding. And sometimes when I hear a certain song or pass a street we once walked down, I wonder, what if we had been braver, or slower, or more ready? There's a strange kind of grief in the paths we don't take. Not regret exactly, just curiosity. A gentle ache for the person you might have become had you turned left instead of right, had you said yes instead of no, had you stayed instead of walking away, or walked away when you chose to stay. But I've learned something along the way. Those untaken roads, they still shape you. They teach you. They clarify what you want and what you're willing to lose. They help you see who you are, not in the life you dreamed of, but in the one you're living. And sometimes, choosing not to go is the bravest decision of all. We like to think that the right path is obvious, that we'll feel sure. But the truth is, most choices are made in the fog, in the uncertainty, in the quiet wrestle between hope and fear. And sometimes you don't realize you've made the right decision until years later, when you're holding someone's hand or watching a sunset in your own backyard, or laughing over dinner in a home you almost never had. I still think about those other lives. I let them visit me now and then, but I don't live in them. I live here, in the life I built, not because it was perfect, but because it was real, because I showed up for it, because I chose it, even when I didn't know what it would look like in the end. And maybe the most important thing I've learned is this: not every no is a missed opportunity. Sometimes it's the beginning of something deeper, truer, quieter, and far more yours. So here I am, standing in a life shaped not just by the roads I traveled, but by the ones I had the courage to walk away from. And I still remember them, all of them, not with longing, but with peace. I used to think that making a difference meant doing something big, something newsworthy, something that would earn applause, recognition, maybe even a line in the obituary one day that said, "They changed the world." But that was before I understood the quiet weight of impact, the kind that doesn't make headlines, the kind that never trends, the kind that lives in the hearts of people who remember you, not because of what you did, but because of how you made them feel. I still remember the day I stayed late at work to help a new hire who looked overwhelmed. She never asked. I just saw myself in her, young, trying too hard not to cry, pretending to know more than she did. I sat with her, explained the system, gave her space to mess up without shame. She never forgot that. Years later, she wrote me a letter saying that moment was when she decided not to quit. It wasn't in my job description, but it mattered. Then there was the neighbor, an elderly woman whose husband had recently passed. Most people walked by with polite silence, unsure of what to say. I didn't say much either. But I brought her soup. I listened to her stories. I let her grieve without fixing it. Every Sunday for a year, I knocked on her door and just sat. I don't think she would have called it heroic, but she started smiling again. And then, of course, there are the things no one will ever know. The check slipped under a door for someone who'd lost their job. The late-night phone call I picked up when I was exhausted. The apology I gave first, even when I didn't feel like I was the one in the wrong. The forgiveness I offered that no one saw. Those were small things, invisible things, but they changed people. They changed me. Because giving does something to the giver. It chips away at your pride. It opens your clenched hands. It reminds you that love isn't measured in words but in sacrifices, especially the ones that don't come easy. There's something holy about giving when no one's watching. About planting seeds you may never see bloom. And somewhere along the way I stopped asking, what will I get in return? And started asking, what kind of person do I want to be when no one is keeping score? I think we underestimate how much good we're capable of. We think we need more time, more money, more confidence. But most of the time what people need is simple. Presence, patience, a word that says, I see you, you matter. And if that's all I've ever truly given, then maybe that's enough. I won't pretend I've lived some great saintly life. I've missed opportunities. I've said no when I could have said yes, but I've also tried, day by ordinary day, to show up, to give what I had, to be kind when it would have been easier to be distant. And looking back, it's not the trophies or titles I remember most, it's the people, the lives that brushed against mine and left a spark. If I've made any difference in this world, it wasn't with grand gestures. It was with the quiet decision, over and over, to care. And I still remember those moments. The way they felt. The way they echoed back, and I hope, somewhere out there, someone remembers them too. There's a version of me I used to long for. A future self I imagined when I was scared or small or lost. Someone calm, someone kind, someone strong enough to walk into a room and not shrink. I used to close my eyes and picture that person, sitting beside me during the worst moments, whispering, "You'll make it through, I promise." I didn't know it back then, but I wasn't just dreaming of someone else, I was dreaming of me. It's strange looking back, realizing how often we search for someone to save us, someone to hold our hand, to understand without asking, to carry the weight when it gets too heavy. And yes, there were people who showed up along the way, but the deepest healing, that came from the day I stopped waiting for rescue and started becoming what I needed. I needed someone who could set boundaries without guilt. So I learned to say no, not because I stopped loving people, but because I finally started loving myself. I needed someone who didn't minimize their pain, who could cry without shame and still keep going. So I gave myself permission to feel, really feel, without apologizing for the mess of it. I needed someone who believed in me, even when I doubted everything. So I began speaking to myself with the same kindness I used to reserve for others. And let me tell you, it wasn't a light switch moment. It was slow and uneven and sometimes ugly. Growth is a jagged path, not a straight climb. I fell. I forgot my worth more times than I can count. I returned to old patterns like they were safe places. But little by little, I began to notice something shifting. I was becoming more patient, more grounded, more honest. I started choosing peace over performance, truth over pretending. I stopped chasing people who didn't want to stay and started showing up for the one person who would always be with me, me. It wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. I became the person who sits quietly with pain instead of running from it. The one who doesn't need to be the loudest in the room to feel worthy. The one who knows when to fight and when to rest. The one who knows their story matters, not because it's glamorous, but because it's true. And you know what's beautiful about becoming that person? You begin to offer to others what you once so desperately needed. You become someone's safe space, someone's quiet reminder that healing is possible, that you can be broken and beautiful, that strength can live in softness, that the life you thought had passed you by was just waiting for you to step into it, whole and unafraid. So to the younger me, the scared, unsure, heart-heavy version who needed a hero, I see you now. And I hope you see me too. Because everything you endured wasn't wasted. It was building this strength, this heart, this person. And I still remember the longing, the ache, the hope. It led me here, to the life I didn't know I was worthy of, to the person I used to need, finally staring back at me in the mirror. Whole, human, enough. I still remember. Not everything. Not every date, not every name, not every detail. But I remember what mattered. The smell of home on a Sunday morning, the sound of laughter through thin walls, the quiet way love showed up without needing a spotlight. The pain I thought would destroy me but didn't. The lives I almost lived. The kindness I gave when no one noticed. The person I used to need, slowly becoming the person I am now. I've walked through joy and ache, through silence and song, through rooms filled with people and seasons of unbearable aloneness. And through it all, memory has been both a compass and a weight. It pulls me back, but it also reminds me how far I've come. It tells me again and again, you were there, you felt this, you survived it all. And now I carry those memories like weathered stones in my pocket. Not burdens, but tokens of growth, of love, of every version of me I've ever been. There is something sacred about looking back without bitterness. To trace the lines of your story and find beauty not just in the victories, but in the valleys. To honor the mistakes without letting them define you. To see the people who shaped you, for better or worse, and say, thank you. Not because they were perfect, but because they were part of your becoming. If you're listening to this now, wondering if your memories matter, if your story means anything, I want to tell you, it does. Every tear, every laugh, every scar and second chance. It all belongs. It all builds, and it all deserves to be remembered. So maybe today is the day you sit with your story, not to judge it, not to rewrite it, but to hold it, to breathe with it, to see yourself not as someone who went through life, but someone who lived it. I still remember, and I always will, because this life, this imperfect, beautiful, broken, resilient life, it made me who I am, and that is something worth carrying forward.